Welcome to Climate Curious Quickies, bite-sized nuggets of climate goodness from our TEDx experts in under 10 minutes.
In this week's Climate Curious, we're getting in our fields and asking, has the climate movement been playing too nice? Our guest today asks whether playing by the rules is part of the problem. Sociologist, professor and author Dana R. Fisher joins us to discuss how the climate movement interacts with the powers that be and what we can do by looking back at the history of social change to really move the needle in 2026. Dana has spent her life studying activism and the sacrifices associated with it and asks, if the game is broken, should we change the game? On why we need a revolution, not a revamp, here's Dana R. Fisher, recorded live at TED 2026. Stay curious.
I believe in systemic change,
Okay,
right?
so talk to us about that.
So systemic change means that we need to recognize that a true addressing of the climate crisis is breaking up this system that has captured us, which is fossil fuel driven and is incredibly unequal, right? And the problem is we've seen a growth in inequality, a growth in political polarization, and fossil fuel interests have like a stranglehold on decision making, intentionally, right? I mean, they bought it so that they can control it, and and that's why we're opening up coal mines again in the United States because that's a winning move.
Like paying for it.
I mean, literally,
the economics
more,
don't work.
Right? I mean, it doesn't work at all. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's where we are. So there are people in the world who believe that we can maintain the same status quo, the same social hierarchies, and address climate change. And I like to think of them as what I call incrementalists. They believe in this incremental change where we don't change the system, we don't become more equal, we just become cleaner. And that's where you see a lot of this idea of technological innovation that can solve the problem without doing any of the hard work.
And has not been where the climate movement was for a very long time, it feels, and was changing.
So the climate movement was there. The climate movement started to change, I believe, when we saw a lot with the school strikes, with Fridays for Future. I mean, we can thank Greta, but there were young people all over the world who were involved in this. So I don't want to say, and I know Greta would herself not say that it's very clearly.
But the idea of like the youth voice globally coming in. I think.
And some of the work that I did was actually looking at kind of the main issues there. And while we see that for other movements, there's a diversity of perspectives, there was a lot of consistency within the climate movement during that period of time that justice and equity were main themes along with climate change within the movement. Now, I also observed how a lot of what we call in the United States the big greens, which are these professionalized groups, really, how do I say this? They, I don't want to say they exploited the young people, but they, in a lot of...
So as a means to an end, maybe?
Well, it was more like they wanted to take advantage of the popularity and the notoriety of young people and youth activists.
Without signing up to...
Without actually embracing the type of change. I mean, unfortunately, I think we really saw that during the Biden administration, where the Biden administration came into power. They actually were able to take advantage of young people, many of whom were climate activists, who got involved in helping to campaign for Biden. And Biden said that he was going to do a whole bunch of things. And what he ended up doing in the end, and he didn't have the political capacity to do everything he said he was going to do, he ended up with a very weak policy, which did involve more climate policy than we ever had in the United States before. It also gave away a whole bunch of resources and money to fossil fuel interests.
That was a compromise, right?
Super compromise, super incremental. And the young people got kind of screwed in the whole process.
I mean, because I think there was like definitely, I remember, because I've not been involved in this movement for very long, but I came in around that time and I remember thinking like, wow, there's a really big burden that we're putting on these young people.
Oh yeah. They were really fetishized, right? They were really like, oh, look, we're holding up this, they did the multiracial justice and climate activists, and you should buy our product. And obviously then we're legit with our perspective without actually embracing it and bringing it into the message of the movement. And it ended up, I think it really backfired for them because a lot of young people got very involved and engaged and motivated by protesting the war in Gaza. And they were really repressed. I mean, if we saw what happened on college campuses across the United States, the repression was outrageous.
And in the UK.
And in the UK, I mean, we saw it in a lot of places. I mean, so it's funny because I used to be on the faculty at Columbia, and every year we had encampments on campus. I mean, and I taught activism right on campus, so I always had these activists in my class. And I would always walk across the green to go to teach, and there's always some of my student pops out of a tent and it's like, "Hey, Professor Fisher, I'll see you in class." And I'm like, "Don't forget to do the reading. I'm sure you've got a battery light so you can do your reading at night, right?" And they're like, "See you there," right? So
it was
always
part of college life.
Completely part of the college culture, right? I mean, we had campus when I was in college. I mean, I didn't go to Columbia, but so the fact that this one time they were so repressive, they brought in police. And I just was on this event in New York City last week where one of the leaders of the movement on Columbia's campus was talking about the ways that he has felt like he has been surveilled and scrutinized, and it's amazing that he's been able to graduate. So many young people got turned off. So between the incremental policy making, the ways that youth activists were treated, we did not see young people turn out for Harris during the most recent election, and that's one of the reasons that's one of the reasons that Trump won.
Yes.
And why Harris lost. And we are no longer seeing young people in the streets protesting in the United States. Yeah. We're not seeing them protesting on college campuses because they're terrified and they feel completely disconnected.
It comes back to solidarity in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like you use these people for what you wanted. You did not stand up for them. Why on earth would you think that they would come back out for you?
And if you're going to let police, am I allowed to say beat the shit out of you? Okay, if you're going to let
if it's happened, you can say it.
If you're going to let the police come in, clear young people and beat the shit out of them, which quite frankly happened on a number of college campuses, if you're going to let that happen and not stand up and push back to that, then what makes you think that, because that's what solidarity is about. Solidarity is about standing up for and protecting young people.
I mean,
and the overlap, just so you know, like the overlap between the young people who were caring about climate and were caring about the war in Gaza was very, very high. So these were climate activists, many of them.
I mean, I always find it, what I found bizarre, I always find bizarre, is this idea that we teach these things. Like because I went to high school in New York, and, so I have like a deep...
Oh, really? Okay, so you were in high school in New York, and then you were in London?
And then I was in Canada for a while, so I have this like deep like embedding in like North American politics and that. I remember we learned about Kent State. We and even before that, you learn about the suffragists, you learn about Martin Luther King Jr., you learn about all of these people. And then in our higher education institutions particularly, and then we're like, what, fucking surprised that the very young people were teaching about like civil disobedience and resistance. I mean, you were teaching activism. Employ it?
Yeah.
It just, I could not understand why people were so shocked it was happening. It's like, you're teaching it. Like,
well, I mean, I completely agree, but I also am very worried about making. I mean, as somebody who teaches activism, I worry about saying, "Oh, it's because they're being taught that."
It's not because they're being taught it, but we hold it up as like a idea. Like we
talk about
respect it. We think it's a good thing, but only if it happened historically.
But what I think is really interesting is when we teach history, and there's some really wonderful work that's been done about this. We really have whitewashed and greenwashed these movements and the grittiness of what civil disobedience involves. I mean, one of the things that I ended up talking a lot with, and I talked a lot with the folks at Extinction Rebellion about this in the past few years, because they were like, but we got arrested. And it's like, do you know what happened during the civil rights movement? During the civil rights movement, so many leaders, they were arrested. I mean, and Martin Luther King Jr. was like, we want to fill the jails. I mean, that was one of the tactics employed by the movement.
Completely.
I mean, but also a lot of people were beaten up, and there were people who were murdered. And that is the grittiness of social change. And I am not saying that activists should go, get beaten up, be imprisoned, be murdered. But that is likely the price that we are going to have to pay for the kinds of systemic changes we need.
Thanks for listening to this quickie.
This episode was created by our superstar podcast team at TEDxLondon. Until next time,
stay curious.